You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
Hey everybody, the remake of About Last Night came out last Friday, and you know what that means?
I'm going to give you terrible advice about your love life.
So what else is new? This also means another episode of Don't F With The Original, the show where we check out remakes, dig out the original,
Yeah,
watch it, review it, and then give our expectations about the remake.
exactly.
That's what we do.
Yeah,
Like I made it sound so complicated.
I know. We just watched the original movie. That's all we did. Then
Yeah.
we talk about it.
Yeah, that's what we do. There you go.
I'm Nicholas. I'm the gaming correspondent for Idiomatic.
And I'm Dimitri, editor-in-chief of Idiomatic.com and movie critic. Because they came out with like 3 remakes in the same week last week, we obviously sort of spread them out over several weeks for the show, which means that we're actually a week late for About Last Night. And that also means that I got to see the remake. But first, let's talk about the original.
Yeah.
About Last Night, a film by Robert Zwick.
Okay.
What year was it again?
86.
1986, based on the David Mamet play.
Oh, a play. That's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Mamet plays, actually. So that was a movie I was actually looking forward to watching for this show. And
Okay.
you know what? I'm gonna let you do the synopsis.
Okay. Well, it's the story about Danny and Debbie who meet up at a bar and they hook up for one night. Then they fall in love and you see them date.
Yeah, and Danny's played by Rob Lowe, and Debbie's played by Demi Moore.
Demi Moore, yes. And yeah, they fall in love despite terrible advice from their best friends, Bernie and Joan, who are played by James Belushi and Elizabeth Perkins.
Yeah, Elizabeth Perkins, she's friends with Demi Moore's character, and James Belushi is best buds with Rob Lowe's character.
Yeah. And that's basically the movie. It's them trying to, live like adults whereas their friends are basically giving them, teenage advice on love is pretty much how I saw it.
Yeah, no, I think that's quite accurate.
And, so yeah, what do you think of the movie?
I actually was pleasantly surprised by it. Like I said, it's based on a David Mamet play, but the thing with adapting a play into a romantic comedy a lot of times is that what they do is they remove all the substance from it.
Yeah.
Certainly you get a little bit of it, there's the obligatory third act possible breakup, and
Yeah.
then followed by the montage of like, will they get together, will they not, or they're very sad,
Yeah.
There's all that crap, but I find that the central conflict of the story is actually remarkably different from the standard romantic comedy, and that to me made the movie worthwhile.
Okay. See, I didn't see it that way. Besides the first date, where you can actually see them, they're being very cute together. I saw that as the movie go on, you had like so little scenes where you actually see them happy together. Okay, you see them fuck a lot, and they actually have great sex. Good for them.
They have montage sex on
Yes.
top of that. Like, they have a montage of them fucking like bunnies all the time, essentially.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And I guess from that, we're supposed to assume that they were really happy. But, I don't know. I would have liked to see them in real life, be happy and, together and stuff like that. And you got a lot bigger impression that, there's a lot of conflict between them,
Oh, yeah.
They move in, after 2 months or, dating together. It's pretty fast. And after that, it's like conflict all the time. And you barely see them be happy together besides when they're fucking, So I was wondering at a certain point, are their best friend actually right? And is that going to be like the twist of the movie? Is like their best friend actually right and they should have been together? It's like, it was very weird for me.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. First of all, though, I do want to point out that the montage of them humping like bunnies,
Yeah.
you got the idea that we're meant to see that they're happy. I got more the point that they're going through the honeymoon phase.
Okay.
And then the honeymoon phase ends in montage, because this movie has like 18 different montages in it. Like,
Yeah.
like they sold the soundtrack for a lot of money, I'm sure.
It was an 80s movie. I guess it came after one of the Rockies or something. Like, movie montages are cool.
Yeah. And after that, they enter the more difficult phase of the relationship, where you're sort of stabilizing and trying to learn to cohabitate and care for each other on a different level.
Okay.
And the trouble with these characters for me isn't that we don't see them happy, because I think, there's a lot of dialogue where she goes like, I want to have children with this person. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of conversations that they have that are very smart conversations, just shooting the breeze, where they don't agree on something, but they're having a good time talking about
Okay.
it. But the problem is that they always feel morose because their honeymoon's gone and they don't understand that that's normal and that you have to readjust your expectations in an adult relationship,
Okay.
and they never do.
You bring in very good information here. I really saw it as, well, maybe the honeymoon is over, but you still expect after the honeymoon, it's not like your marriage is just headed directly towards divorce.
Right.
I would still expect to see them having fun once in a while, and not just, well, now that our honeymoon's over, our life, time to have kids and that's it. And,
Yeah.
fun equals zero now. I would still like to see them have fun a little bit and not just be like, why are you two people together,
Okay, see, what you're bringing up as a problem with the movie,
Yeah.
I consider it a problem with the characters. That's the hump that they have to get over to learn their lesson by the end of the movie.
Okay.
They think that life is, okay, you hook up, you have sex, you have a good time, you're in love, and then when that goes away, you have children, you get good jobs, and that's it.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that just because you're in a committed relationship now doesn't mean you can't have fun. Like, there's this great scene where they're like at New Year's Eve and they're eating quietly at home this nice dinner, and they both look like bored as shit with each other,
Yeah.
And she goes like, you know what? We should go out. And he's like, really? You never want to go out. I was like, no, I think we should. And then they go out to a New Year's party. And it's like, when you think about it, it's like, you two are demented. Just because you're in a committed relationship doesn't mean you can't go to a party. And especially a fucking New Year's party. Like, you go to a New Year's party, especially since both your friends are sort of party animals. Like,
Yeah, and they're both there for some reason. They hate each other. And nonetheless, they're in the same party. Both your friends are there. Come on, seriously.
Yeah. And I feel that's not a problem with the story. I feel it's these people don't understand that life isn't on a track. That, it's the scenic route, if you will. That you're supposed to enjoy the time you have, and if you decide to have children, that's a great choice, or, it's a choice like any other, and you can have children, and you can take on more responsibility, but it's not supposed to be about, like, okay, now I have to do this. It's supposed to be like, I think my life is going to be more fulfilled if I take on this responsibility.
Okay.
These guys don't have fun because they think they're not supposed to have fun.
So what do you think about the best friends?
Yeah, let's talk about those best friends. Good idea. I thought the movie started off on a very strong note. The conversation between James Belushi and Rob Lowe, which is him telling a story about the last girl he went out with,
Yeah.
James Belushi, and essentially his last conquest, which takes for effing forever.
I thought that conversation was actually pretty weird. Because it's uninterrupted.
Yeah.
You follow everything, and yet they're at different spots at the same time. So I was wondering, is he telling that story over and over again? Or what is happening? Is he just stopping at this, and then, okay, I'll continue my story in, 6 hours? Or, I don't know, it just seemed very weird the way they filmed it.
I asked myself the same question, and I thought that's what makes it interesting. Either it's a stylistic choice to sort of convey that what these guys do together, all they do is talk about sex.
Okay.
In the context of one single story, instead of giving us 5 different stories that are maybe not as good.
All right.
Or possibly James Belushi's a broken record and he keeps telling the same story, and Rob Lowe keeps acting like he cares.
Yeah.
And honestly, both versions of events work for these characters.
Okay. See, I'm not even sure that the Belushi character ever had sex in his life, but that's just first of all, his story is so like unbelievable that you're like, oh, come on, man.
Oh, it's bullshit. It's clearly and obviously bullshit.
And the way he keeps stupid advice about women that he keeps feeding his friend, you're like, yeah, no, you've never had sex in your life, honestly, never, ever, ever. And so that's interesting though. But I also at a certain point I was even wondering, what is his relationship with, the main character, Danny? I mean, you see them talk about sex all the time, but, and that's about it. And, are they actually friends outside of that? Okay, they play softball, but they still manage to have, talk about sex during softball.
Yeah, they're colleagues, and they play softball together.
Yeah. For the company team, I'm guessing, or I don't know.
Actually, I didn't even assume that, but that's possible, yeah.
So, I mean, is he just his wingman or something? That's why I wasn't sure that, are his feelings genuine for Danny, or is it just, oh, he's my wingman, and if, he goes out with his broad, I'm just, I'm flying solo now, and this sucks.
I think it's because the movie's dated. I think in the 80s, male relationships were about confirming your masculinity to one another, and you didn't share feelings, if you will, blah, you know, blah, blah,
Okay.
like that whole macho bullshit that we sort of, like in the 90s and certainly in the aughts, sort of have rid ourselves of, and that's no longer what a man does.
Okay.
In terms of friendship. But back then, I think that's how friendships were.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense at this point, yeah. Okay.
And I think when you compare it to Joan and Debbie's relationship, you can see the difference between men and women. Neither James Belushi's character or Joan approve of the Rob Lowe Demi Moore relationship.
Yeah.
But they express it in different ways.
John is crazy psycho about it, I swear.
Joan?
I almost feel like at one point she was going to grab a knife and stab Danny at a
Yeah.
point. He was like, she was crazy. It was like, no, she was completely against this relationship.
She's openly hostile.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas James Belushi, clearly he doesn't approve of it, but he's passive-aggressive about it.
Yes. It was kind of fun.
It's hilarious. But I think it denotes how men and women behaved in terms of their friendships back then. Women can be openly hostile with the boyfriend, can express their disapproval openly. That's sort of how the female relationships were at the time and still are to this day. Whereas male relationships at the time, you didn't talk about your feelings with your guy friends, but you still needed to express them. So it all comes through passive aggressively.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think that's the idea. Like when they move in together, Debbie and Danny, Joan just makes it as difficult as humanly possible for them to achieve that.
Yeah.
Whereas James Belushi's character actually shows up to help them, except that he carries practically nothing. Like, he'll carry one lamp at a time and then, come this close from breaking it.
Yeah, and then he just stops and starts watching, Dirty Mags in the middle of moving. You're like, yeah, that was kind of crazy.
He's a very funny character. Because he's the younger brother of John Belushi, I feel that he never could live up to that level of comedy. You don't know, John Belushi was in SNL, and he was sort of the powerhouse of that cast in his generation.
Yeah.
And so James Belushi, I think, always lived in his shadow, but in this movie, I found him extremely funny and charming, and despite the fact that he is an overwhelming asshole.
Yes, that he is.
I watched this movie being very frustrated with Joan, and I don't know if it's because I'm a guy, and I understood what James Belushi's character was going through, what he was feeling, what he was doing, and why Rob Lowe puts up with him.
Yeah.
Where I could not, for the life of me, understand why Demi Moore puts up with Elizabeth Perkins.
Yeah, I couldn't understand that. It's like, were you expecting to live with your best friend for your whole life until you're like 90? I mean, eventually you have to grow up. I mean, seriously, she's in a relationship now. You're going to have to accept that and maybe, go ahead and find one of your own, or, keep screwing with different guys every night if that's your thing. But you don't need your best friend, You can still talk about it on the phone, It's all good. She doesn't have to live with you. I didn't get that. It's like, it was almost like, are they filming, a single white female, in that part of the movie? She was like, seems so possessive about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's where I was actually getting at one point frustrated with both of them. I was like, come on, slap your friends behind the head and say, come on, this is gonna work, and you guys are gonna have to deal with it. But it's like, I don't know. I don't remember in the 80s if guys did that. It's like, okay, no, I'm with her, and I guess that would be expressing your feelings, and you don't do that. So he would have to, have to find a passive aggressive way to tell James Belushi that, But I don't know if he could do that.
Well, eventually, Rob Lowe does stand up to James Belushi, which is a long effing time coming.
Yeah.
But what I found is also a story about how being too overly sophisticated about sex sort of gets in the way of a relationship. Like these are two characters. All four of them are characters who talk about sex so much and have sort of deconstructed it to such an intense degree. Like, oh, you do this in that situation. Oh, you do that in that situation. She did what? And like, what's a pro? And all that crap. And like the girls do it too.
Yeah.
To a point that they don't know how to express what they want or enjoy what they have anymore. They click really well together when they're flirting with each other, Danny and Debbie, because they're so in tune with what to say and when and why and what and when to read a signal and what to do, And then they later on when they finally are in a solidified relationship, they talk about like, oh, the rules of flirting and how that goes and that goes. Like, they're so good at that. But when it comes to building the next phase of their lives together, they don't talk. They never know how to talk. It's like, do you love me? Do you want to be with me? And he goes like, yeah. And she goes, but like he says, yeah, in such an unconvincing way because he's so mystified that she even asks.
I know, because I guess they're not getting advices from their friends about how, this is what you say when, their friends are basically giving them flirting advice. Again, how to pick up girls, for the eve, for the night and stuff like that. So they have no clue what to tell them to do in a real relationship. Yeah. So I could totally see that, then now you're moving into the adult phase and you're like, oh, what the hell am I supposed to do again,
Exactly, and so the only model that they have maybe is what they understood from watching their parents, presumably. I mean, there's a speech about that near the end of the movie. And so they're so effing helpless. And I like the ideas that the movie is talking about, the idea that you reach a point where maybe you're too sophisticated about hooking up, and that you should just sort of like wing it and let your instincts guide you, so that it can guide you for the rest of your relationship as well. Because they're so armed up before that they don't know how to be vulnerable and expose what they really think to each other.
Yeah, when they're flirting as well, since they have everything pre-planned, everything, they're basically showing a facade. That's not who they are. Right. And all of a sudden, when they're in a real relationship and you're like, they don't have anything else. So I was like, well, this is who I am now, and well, you didn't show this person when we were flirting, and all of a sudden you're that person right now. It's like, it's weird. So yeah, maybe just drop the act and be yourself when you meet the person, when you flirt, and see where that goes, instead of just, presenting yourself as the most interesting guy in the world. And then the next day, it's like, I don't know, I'm out of stuff to say, it's like.
Absolutely. I mean, like he comes home, really upset because he had to consider cutting off a really good friend of his, because he works for a company that supplies things for restaurants, and he's befriended one of his clients, a great guy who has a little diner, and the guy ran into some temporary financial troubles. He was asked, Rob Lowe was asked to cut him off. He didn't do it, gave him one more chance, and then it still didn't work out, so he actually did have to cut him off eventually, and he's really mad and upset about it. And he's coming home, he's really mad, and she's like, what's wrong? And he's like, nothing, I don't want to talk about it. I'm Superman, I don't have flaws. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? Just tell her that you had a shit day. Like, it's not that hard.
Exactly. Instead of snapping at her for just random small stuff, explain the situation, that's what she's there for. That's what a relationship is. But I guess that was never explained to him, by his best friend, It was just, stupid rules about not calling the girls and not saying I love you first and stuff like that. That he knows all about that.
Yeah.
But, about, being in committed stuff and, being there for each other, he's like, whew.
Yeah.
And that was me going with my hand above my head, because I guess you couldn't see that.
Yes, if you write us, we will give you a screen cap of Nick putting his hand over his head.
Yes.
Her reaction to it, is as well as like giving him life advice about like, you should do this and you should do that. This is the part of the movie I like less. It's like, oh, you should go into business for yourself. That way you won't have any boss. It's like, yes, you will. Your boss will be called your client. It's this sort of new version of the American dream, which is be your own boss. It's like you will always have a boss. That boss is either your investor, your shareholders, or your client.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a fan of that part of the movie, but I was intrigued at the haphazard way she tries to help him. Goes like, hey, look, I made you a board like with the name of your diner on it. Isn't that great? And I'm like, he hasn't agreed to do this yet.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really scary step to take. Don't pressure him into that way.
Yeah. And I guess also it's still a product of like the 80s where, no, I'm a man, I'm strong, even though, you have a job and you can probably provide for us while, I said the diner. It's like, no, I must be the breadwinner of, this couple because I'm a man, I'm strong. And he's like, that's what he knows. So he's like, no, I can't do that. That's impossible,
But at the same time, she does read him right, in the sense that that's probably the venture for this character that would make him happier.
Yeah.
And so, like, there is a loving relationship there. Like, they do love each other. They do care for each other. They are there for each other. They just don't know how to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
So that's why for me the movie didn't feel as off to me. Like I could see that there's a genuine relationship there. They just don't understand. Like, no, that's what life is. Like
Okay.
it's not flowers and roses all the time.
I know, but to me, life has flowers and roses once in a while, and I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
see any of it. So that's why I was like, this is so weird, you know. But now that you explain that, you know, they're you know, like when you think about it, you know, did you, as a person, you remember, have your parents had any fun in their lives? And you're like, no, my parents never had any fun ever, you know, because they're my parents, you know. So you know, as that's what you think as a kid, and you know, growing up, it's like, have your parents had any fun? No, my parents never had any fun in their lives. So yeah, that's that. I'm guessing that's what they think their life is supposed to be. Their parents, that you know, quote unquote parents, are going towards that. She wants to have kids, so. Yeah, the fun must stop. Now, it's over. The point I really like, though, is, you know, the friends, though, who actually, eventually, you know, they don't really grow up, but they realize that, okay, maybe our friends have grown up, and, you know, they're ready for enough relationships, so, you know, we'll just be happy for them and let them go instead of, you know, acting like psychos.
Yeah, and that was great. I also like the fact that they don't hook up. The two friends never
Yeah.
hook up, which I was very happy about.
Yeah, this movie had come out, like, in the 2000s, yeah, they would have hooked up, and, you know, there would have been, like, two marriages at the same time at the end there, that would have been like, oh my god, face palmy.
Exactly. And neither of them matures, and you pointed that out, and that I like as well. Like, they could have grown up as well,
Yeah.
or even grown up before our main characters, and then given different type of advice. But no, in this movie, they're still not ready for a real committed relationship, and maybe they never will be. Like, maybe that's just not the sort of people they are.
Yeah.
But, as you say, they're willing to accept that their friends have moved on.
Yeah.
I mean, James Belushi's character, who I find is the lesser offender of the two friends,
Yeah.
actually makes a grand gesture. You know, he gives his friend free supplies.
Yeah, that he sort of stole, but you know, it's all good.
And like I think that's a little bit how men express themselves. You know, big gestures, no words.
Yeah.
In the 80s, I think we've moved past that now, but it's a charming moment.
Whereas the other one, you know, basically they more has to basically, you know, tell her, you've been trying to sabotage me since the beginning, you know, so screw you. And basically what the friend does is basically, go talk to him, you're going to stop blaming me, you know, and that's basically all she does.
In terms of actions, but in terms of what she says, when Demi Moore finally calls her out on her bullshit, she confesses that yes, it's true.
That's true, yeah.
And that's a big gesture as well.
Somebody just admitting to me, yeah, I was a bitch, and I was like, well, okay, you know, that doesn't bring me anything, you know. Unless he says I'm never going to do it again, then okay. Then we're getting somewhere, but she didn't say that, you know, so it's like, yeah, I was a bitch.
I think it's implied. But the thing is, I do think it might be that there is still differences between how men perceive friendship and how women perceive friendship. And it's probably, I suspect, the reason why, like you, I responded much more to James Belushi's version of Redemption than I did Elizabeth Perkins, where I was like,
yeah.
All right, I still hate you.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I can understand what you're saying.
I find that Elizabeth Perkins does a very good job playing an insufferable character.
Yeah.
And that James Belushi is very, very, very strong in his role as an equally insufferable character.
Yeah, he's very good.
I thought Rob Lowe holds his own as well. He had that presence that made me want to follow him, but I found Demi Moore a bit lacking in comparison.
Yeah, she was kind of disappearing in certain scenes. That you're like, oh, hi, you're still there, you know. But she was very, I guess, restrained would be the word. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I felt it was harder to tell what she was thinking and feeling, even though Rob Lowe is the character that's supposed to be the more closed off of the two.
Yeah.
You know, she has line where it's like, for God's sakes, I want to have children with this man. I love him. And I'm like, and yet I'm not feeling it.
I know. That's why I was so confused at a certain point. Do you really love him? You know, are you just saying that because you have to say that? Because it's, you know, because you want to try and convince other people? Because, you know, you're not convincing me as the viewer that you really like the guy, you know. She's like, I think she talks to her ex, who's her boss, you know, don't I look like I'm happy? And I'm like, no, you don't. You really don't. You know, you really don't look like you're in love. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, what did you think of the movie overall?
I would not see that. I wouldn't see it. I mean, like you say, it's very dated. So, like, you had to explain to me a bunch of stuff. It's like, oh, yeah, it's the 80s. Now I can kind of see what they're doing. But right now, you're like, you know, the James Belushi character, he's like, you would see like a drunken version of Barney, that's
Essentially, yeah.
that is not as good as what he does. Then Barney, he'd be like,
Yeah, Barney from How I Met Your Mother,
Yeah.
by the way.
Exactly. Everybody knows who Barney is, but no.
No, it's like, in case people thought, like, what, the purple dinosaur?
Yeah, no, it's Barney from How I Met Your Mother. You're right. Barney, the character, is kind of meant as a joke. He's not meant to be real. He's just like bigger than life.
Yeah.
Hound dog, and you're like, now you're seeing this character, and you're like, that's kind of sad. I'm sorry. It's very dated. Going maybe a little bit ahead of myself, but from the preview we saw about the remake, I would go see that instead.
What I will say is that the movie surprised me because I expected something more shallow than it ended up being. I think there's a lot of truth in the idea that we are programmed or propagandized to death about how to live a relationship in an unhealthy way. Fiction, movies especially, but TV shows as well,
Yeah.
And literature want us to be witty about it, want us to be smart and deconstructionist about it, and that's not healthy. And it's in real life too, like that the formula and those people who write advice column for guys who can't get dates and all of that. Like it's all the game and the thing. And then there's the sitcoms that tell you how family life is, and how it is the woman leads the show and the man just puts up with her, and then they kiss at the end, and movies about when they kiss for that first time, or when they reunite after a big stupid fight,
Yeah.
And this movie doesn't do that. This movie has them actually going through a real relationship and getting bored with each other and getting frustrated with each other. And that being the obstacle. Like, none of these characters make the big mistake. I lied to you, or blah, blah, blah. Oh, it looked like I cheated, but no, like...
Oh, yeah, that would have been terrible.
Exactly. And the movie doesn't go through that. There is a scene where Demi Moore sees Rob Lowe kiss a girl on New Year's Eve and under the mistletoe, and she sees it, and she gets mad, and that fuels her up about other issues, not about the kiss. That's not what really upsets her, because she's a mature adult.
Yeah.
It upsets her, but not enough to break up with someone.
Yeah, it's New Year's. Come on.
and she knows that. She never brings up like, I saw you kiss that girl. No, she sees that puts her in a bad mood, and then she dumps all of the other shit she's been carrying. Which is that's more normal. They don't have those big like I'm gonna throw plates fights. They just sort of grow apart.
Plates are expensive. Why would you do that?
Because that's what they do in Hollywood movies.
I know.
That's what they do in sitcoms. That's what we've been taught to think a relationship is, and this movie is all about how all of that is bullshit.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna give this movie a recommendation. I was bored during parts of it. There's way too much montages. It's crazy, but I think its heart is in the right place, and it's interesting. But like you, I'm looking at the remake, and I'm going, that's the better movie you should see.
Why do you say that? I mean, I think it's been a little more modernized, to appeal to, this type of crowd, where, the guys, they talk a lot more between each other. It's not just, about, having sex, and, stuff like that. You get more honest and stuff like that. But what do you see different besides that?
Well, I think there's a little bit more energy to the movie.
Yes, that is true.
And I think that's a little bit what's missing from the 80s movie. I think they tell a long story and they cut through the baggage with a lot of montages, and I think it's a device that's overused because montages, yes, they get you to point A to point B in a very fast fashion, but you do lose energy because while I'm watching a fucking music video, my mind has the opportunity to start to sort of wander.
Yeah.
Whereas the remake, instead they have this sort of clever bit with the subtitles that say, about this summer, about this winter. And they sort of link the stages of the relationship with the seasons of the year. So that was kind of clever. And you talk about it being modernized.
Yeah.
I like that they added a lot of jokes about the dating rituals with social media. Like, what do you do and what do you don't? That's great. That's totally the sort of material I want to see.
Talking about Facebook, and the guy's like, Facebook, what the hell? That was like really funny. I really like that part.
Yeah. And the actors all look really, really charming. I'm a big fan of Joy Bryant, Debbie.
Yeah.
Because she's gorgeous.
Okay, of course.
You get a stronger sense of who her character is from her performance, as opposed to Demi Moore, who sort of played her as a blank slate. And Michael Ealy, whom people may recognize from Almost Human, he plays a robot.
Okay.
He's so good in that role. So he's a great casting for exactly the Danny character, where, he's a guy who doesn't have to try very hard to be charming and really attractive to a woman.
Even his friend being jealous, you're too good looking, you need an accident, that'll help you out. It's just, no, seriously, come on. How is that detriment being good looking? Come on.
I know what he means, though. The idea that, when you're too good looking, you become inaccessible in people's minds.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah, you're right.
And it's a funny joke. It's a funny joke. The best thing that could happen to you is an
industrial accident. Yeah, that's pretty good.
As a result of them being a stronger couple together, though, it makes the movie a little bit murkier as to what the hell went wrong with their relationship. It's a little bit harder to tell. And the ending as well doesn't really spell it out for you the way that the original does.
No, that trailer looks like a lot of fun. A lot more fun than, the fun that I had watching the other movie. The other movie, they say it's a dramedy. The MIDI in dramedy was very, very small in the original. Mm-hmm. In this one, if it's anything like a trailer, it's going to be a lot more laughs. So I'm actually going to watch that movie.
The one major drawback is that their best friends are way over the top in this version. I much prefer James Belushi and Elizabeth Perkins. This is a little bit too cartoony and probably is the thing that drags the movie down a little bit. But again, if you're going to pick between watching the 80s version and the 2014's version, I actually say, no, watch the 2014 version. I think it's a stronger movie. If you're not sold on it, check out the trailer. This is one of the most charming, funny things I've seen in a while, honestly.
It is very charming. It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. All right, so next week, we will be reviewing Psycho because Bates Motel Season 2 is coming out.
Cool.
So, a little bit change of pace in terms of what we consider a remake, but, Until then, if you want to write us and share with us your love for About Last Night, or your hatred for it, or Perversions in Chicago, I think is the name of the play, I don't remember really. You can write us at mail@idiomatic.com or post a comment at idiomatic.com. We're also on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. We're also on iTunes. If you could like us on Facebook or just write us an iTunes review, that would be great. If you're looking for us on Twitter, it's at idiomatic, so that's pretty easy.
Yeah.
And it helps us continue to get the support we need to continue generating content, so we'd be grateful for that. Otherwise, I will have no choice but to fast forward the end of my relationship with Nick by way of montage.